My name's Joy Steward, and I'm the Executive Director of the Homer Foundation that is located in Homer, Alaska, and specifically at the bottom of the Kenai Peninsula, the lower end of the Kenai Peninsula. The nonprofit sector to me just represents community and people's willingness to roll up their sleeves and make things work. And I think that spirit really is pervasive in Homer. Whether it's the rural isolation, it's the strong independence is just kind of part of the Alaska mystique or whatever. So you have people that generally aren't looking for other people to do for them, and yet they have this amazing generosity of spirit. They'll stop if your car's... And so it just kind of is that mix, that spirit that comes together and says, if we want something done, we can do it. If a neighbor needs help, we can do it. We do it as individuals, and it seemed like a pretty easy step for people to come together. I've been working in the nonprofit sector for about 20 years. I started as a director of a local arts council. And at that time, I was invited to serve on a committee that was creating the Homer Foundation. And we built the Articles of Incorporation and the bylaws. And I was so inspired by the concept of having a vehicle in the community for individuals to be able to give back, and having weathered some really major cutbacks in government funding for the arts and everything. We have boom and bust cycles in Alaska. So we had the oil boom followed by a bust. So state funding for the arts was cut 52% in 1 year, our grant. So the idea of having some permanent kind of funding available for the local nonprofits was very, very appealing to me. We were the first community foundation in the state of Alaska, so Homer is pretty unique. We're small, we're rural, we're in Alaska, but we're very sophisticated in the things we want, and we're willing to work for them. It's kind of the attitude that I have. I think at the foundation we're really proud of kind of that initiation, that little kickstart that we were able to give the project. It was the biggest single project that we feel we really had a significant impact on. And even though $50,000 was a pretty small piece, I think it ended up being about an $8 million project. It was the timing and the show of community support that enabled them to go forward and get the rest of the funding, besides an amazing amount of local community support. And we have an amazing arts community, and that's where I have a lot of knowledge. And I used to think about it. Why are there so many artists in Homer? We're at the end of the road. And there's not a lot of roads in Alaska, but one of them ends in Homer. And people come down here and they kind of get stuck for that reason. They don't pass through Homer. You can come and you can leave, but you don't pass through Homer. So it's also an amazingly beautiful place. So it inspires that in people. It has a way of bringing that out. So even if you're not an artist, you feel compelled to want to have some kind of expression of creativity. And there wasn't a lot of government doing things for people. There weren't a lot of established organizations. A lot of things that are done by municipalities are done by nonprofits in our community. The cultural things are all done by nonprofits. There's no with the exception of the library, which is a city department, but the museum and the kinds of things that might be done by cities in a larger setting. There's not a lot of presence of national or international organizations that you might find in a large city. So if you wanted an environmental group, Greenpeace has come through on several occasions in their boat, but they're not centered here. And so we have amazing energy in organizations that want to protect this beautiful place. So if these large organizations weren't going to come and do it for us, we were going to do it ourselves. So we established our own environmental groups, and the same for the arts, and the same for health and human services. If people needed to be fed, we're going to create a food pantry, and if people needed to have certain kinds of services, mental health or women's shelters. They just decided that we would do it, and they've done it. And here we were doing this huge grants process for $1,000. By then, I think we were up to $2,000 or $2,500 once a year, and disappointing lots of people because they weren't going to get the money. And he said, "You're so small." And we all went, "Oh." And he said, "Use it to your advantage." He says, "You can respond to the community's needs faster than the Ford Foundation can answer a phone call." He said, "Why are you waiting once a year? Why aren't you just accepting applications and dealing with them?" So at that moment in time, we went to what we call our immediate response grants. And we just decided that we would put it out there and see what happened. And we committed not only our earnings from our unrestricted fund. All of our funds are pooled for investment purposes. They're all endowed funds, which means you never touch the corpus. You only distribute the earnings, except for we have an unrestricted fund, which means we can do anything we want with it. So at that point, we decided we would take our earnings and dedicate an amount from that unrestricted fund each year. So it's another reason we haven't grown exponentially, is because a lot of our contributions come into the unrestricted fund, and we are expending those rather than putting them into endowment. But what it's meant is we've put over $1 million in our community through various grants and programs that we've done over the years. We set up a program where the kids kind of mirror what my board does. And they have a lot of independence. They run their meetings. Bonnie is their advisor. I come to most of the meetings. But we just created agendas and kind of figured out, and unlike us, they don't do a year-round grants program, but they were going to have a grants program. It was going to deal with youth issues. They were going to have to raise some of the money. It's an amazing set of leadership skills that they'll be able to take with them the rest of their lives. They've learned about philanthropy in the broadest sense. They've learned about how to assess needs, and they decided to focus on youth issues since they were all youth. They would do surveys and talk to their peers. And the kids are always talking about, well, home are so small, there's not enough to do. And so they came up with, well, the small amount of funds that we have are not going to be able to serve all of the kids that need services, and there are agencies providing services. So let's talk about providing more activities for kids, so maybe they won't make bad choices. And so they came up with, we will fund projects that are fun, affordable, easily accessible, and they put out their applications to the nonprofit sector. They did site visits to each of the applicants. They sat down as a group, made the decisions. They had raised half the money. We said we would match everything they raised. The first year, I think they raised $2,000. So they had $4,000 to give away. This last year, I think they raised over $6,000 and gave away $8,500 or $8,700 in grants. They were recognized in 2008 with the Outstanding Youth Group in Philanthropy Award. My advice is, I think every community should have one, whether they can do it on their own or affiliate with a larger one in a adjoining community or in a statewide model. It's a concept that works, and it's being proven over and over and over in communities around the country. And now the concept has moved to Europe. There's community foundations in Europe, Russia, England, Scotland, Ireland, all over. We have the smallness and the remoteness that kind of in some ways isolates you, but in other ways really, I think, pulls the community together. You're really dependent on your community and your friends and your neighbors. People get involved in their community, figuring out what the issues are, saying we can make a difference. This is one way we can do it, that we can make a difference in our communities. And if everybody does it in their community, oh my God, it's the world.